Hi guys, Danny here, and welcome to my mod update video on Automagy. Now Automagy is quickly becoming my favorite Thaumcraft addon because of the insane amount of things you can do with it and how versatile it is compared to, say, a tech mod. So yeah, without giving too much away, let me get started. First of all, we have the Thirsty Tank. The Thirsty Tank can drink any liquid that comes in contact with it. So over here, what I'm going to do is take this Thirsty Tank and get some lava, like so, and make holes in the ground, put the Thirsty Tank there, and the lava here, and you can see that when the lava touches the Thirsty Tank, it will get absorbed and put inside of the Thirsty Tank. Now, as you probably saw, it doesn't have to be the source block that's touching the Thirsty Tank, even the flowing blocks will actually get absorbed in. Okay, so as you can see, it's incredibly handy. Now, just by placing a Thirsty Tank in a pool of water, you will be able to absorb a lot of the source blocks just because of the flowing blocks, so that's pretty handy. And on top of that, what you can do is have it beside a infinite water source, and it will continue to pick up the water slowly without draining anything. There you go. And then what you can do is, after I go into survival, I can just take a bucket or any way of taking the water out, so like so. And if I just right click, you can see I can take the water out. I can also put the water back in. So it's incredibly handy, and you can also have golems do it, as it says right here. So liquids can be added or removed from the tank in the standard fashion, such as by buckets or by certain golems, so incredibly handy. Next we have the Golems Workbench, which is essentially an automatic crafting system that uses golems to make the different items. So it's incredibly simple. We essentially have a 3x3 crafting grid that you can specify the recipe in, and an inventory where you can place the different items necessary to make the different items in the crafting grid. So because I have it set to create crafting tables, I'll need to place the planks, and you can see the planks here. Now there are a couple of rules that you have to follow. Specifically, the normal golems will only be able to make recipes that will fit in a 2x2 grid, or if all of its components are the same. For example, a storage block, for example an iron block that uses 9 iron ingots, they'll be able to be made by a normal golem. But for advanced recipes, you're going to need an advanced golem. And then you're going to have to use a golem with an empty golem animation core and attach it to the workbench. And then you have to instruct the golem to take out the item you're making. And finally, you can specify where you're going to put the item using a Golemancer spell. And it's incredibly simple. So if I right click on the golem there, you can see that I have it set to the chest there. And I have the golem placed on the workbench like I'm supposed to. And if I right click, what I could do is specify the item it's supposed to make. So if I just take one of these guys, specify that it's supposed to make a crafting table, we can see that the amount of crafting tables in the chest goes up. And if I check the inventory here, you can see the amount of wooden planks I have also goes down. So you can see that corresponds to each other. Now you can see the golem is getting some kind of weird effect, and that is this lethargic effect that the golem gets after making items for a while. And to prevent that, what you can do is have a jar of Fabrico nearby, and that essentially speeds up the process. I have Fabrico here. Okay, just like that. Give it a couple of seconds and the golem will start working faster than ever. And there you go. Faster than ever. It's going to use up that supply of planks really quickly. But over here, I have this golem, or rather this workbench, set to create wooden swords. And I have the items here to make the wooden sword. But as you can see, even though I have the empty golem set to make the wooden sword, it's not making anything. That is because this is a 3x3 recipe, and the golem is just not an advanced golem, so it won't be able to make the wooden sword. However, if I had an advanced golem here, it would be able to make the sword. One last thing that you have to keep in mind is that the golems will only be able to make the normal items that are craftable using a standard crafting table. so no magical Thaumcraft items using a arcane workbench. However, even without that, this is incredibly handy, and it allows you to automate the makings of items without using tech mods, so it's incredibly handy. With every new update comes new crystalline brains, and with every new crystalline brains comes new magical items. So what we have over here is the Thermostatic Spire, which automatically refills your potentia inside of your thermostatic harness, essentially allowing you to fly indefinitely. So if we have a look, if we just let the potentia drop down to 63, you'll see it automatically jump back to 64. There you go, 63 and 64. That is because the Thermostatic Spire is automatically refilling the Essentia for me, as you can see there. Okay, now the Thermostatic Spire is incredibly handy and incredibly easy to make. You do require a few things, that is the thermostatic pylon, the controller, a chisel quartz block, and a thaumium block. Now the components have to be placed in a suitable location. The quartz block has to go on the bottom and the thaumium block has to go on the top, but the pylons and the controller can go in any order. In the example here, it goes thaumium block, pylon, controller, pylon, but I have it set as thaumium block, controller, pylon, pylon. So like I said, and the ones in between can go in any order. The thaumium block has to have an empty space above it and an unobstructed view of the sky. And once everything is in order, you can just right click the controller with your wand and the thaumium block is converted into a thermostatic spire. Now like I said, it's incredibly handy, and the spire covers a wide area, and you can even extend that area by giving it various things. So as you can see here, it says the covered area can be increased by feeding it with air essentia, and the rate at which potentia is distributed can be increased by piping in volatis, and both are amplified through placements of additional pylons. And I only have the necessary pylons, I haven't added any more. But as you can see here, no benefit is gained after the structure's 6th pylon, and I only have 2, so I can still put in 4 more. And then finally, you can right click on a side of a controller with your wand to change the type of essentia it will accept on that specific side. So what I have it set to this side is obviously the potentia, as you can see if I right click there. It's air now, volatis, and finally potentia. On this side, I have it set to, well, it doesn't matter on this side. Over here, I'll set it to volatis. And on this side, I'll have it set to air. Now, if I added air and volatis, it will increase the amount of potentia I'm getting, but I'm not going to do it because I'm getting enough potentia regardless. Now, another really important thing, which I nearly forgot there, is that the air essentia and the volatis essentia are not necessary for the machine, for the tower, to send the potentia. However, you do need an air V node sending power through a relay. I'm not really using a relay, that's because my energized node is close enough, but as you can see, that does have the air aspect in it. So without the air aspect constantly being fed through an energized ore node, the spire would not be able to function. So if I turn that off and give that a couple of seconds, once the energized aura node turns back into a normal node, it won't be giving off the air energy anymore, and the spire will stop working, and then my potentia won't refill itself. Now the node has lost its energized status, so it's no longer sending the air V across. So that means the spire isn't giving out the potentia to my thermostatic harness, and you can see that the amount of potentia I have in my harness isn't increasing. Now that is a very important thing that you have to remember, because I made the mistake myself. I thought the air V that they were talking about here was the air essentia, but you have to remember that the air essentia and the volatis essentia are not necessary. However, the air V to an energized node is necessary for it to work. So if I turn that on, I give it a couple of seconds, and that turns into its energized form, and the spire will start working again. It'll get that crazy effect, and the V will come back to me. Okay, so the node got turned into the energized form, and my harness is finally filling up with potentia again. You can actually see the lightning effect going from the spire I think it went inside of my harness. I couldn't really see it. Pretty sure the lightning effect goes towards the harness. Regardless, incredibly handy and incredibly awesome. Next, we have another really cool multi-block structure, the Essential Locus. What this allows you to do is centralize your essentia. So if I just hover over this, it'll tell me how much essentia I have overall. And you can see 192, 64, and 8, and which is exactly what I have here. But say I was to pick up one of these guys and go back here, you can see that it's already updated. And if I was to put this back, you can see that it's already updated again. Do that, and there you go. So like I just showed there, it's incredibly handy because it allows you to have just one location where you can see all the essentia you have overall. So that makes it incredibly handy. So how does it work? Well, first of all, you have to make this structure. So silver wood planks with water, lapis in the middle, and on top of the lapis there actually needs to be a water crystal cluster. And finally on top of that you have to place the Essential Locus, which goes in the end. And when you do that, the water crystal cluster disappears and the Essential Locus starts floating around. But say I was to break any of these blocks, the multi-block structure would break and I would not be able to see how much essentia I had overall. So if I break that, boom. The crystal cluster broke and the brain fell off. So what I'll need to do is go over here, crystal, and finally the Essential Locus. But as you can see, I can't see how much essentia I have anymore. So what I need to do is get one of these crystalline eye, go over here, tag a group of jars. You can just click one jar, just right click on one jar and it will be able to scan all the jars around it. Over here, right click, and there you go. Whoops, I had already tagged that to another one, so it must be this one. Boom. Okay, so that's pretty handy. But say I wanted to tag these guys as well, and I have. Can I just put it there? No, I cannot. Why not? Well, to tag any other jars, what you need to do is place a crystal cluster beside it. So now that extends the reach of the Essential Locus, so I'll be able to put in one more eye. And there you go, now the eye is floating around and you can see that these guys got tagged as well, so there you go. Okay, so reading from the Thaumcraft to get the details. Like I said, the structure has to be made and then the Essential Locus has to be placed at the end. Once a locus is established, you can specify water jars using the crystalline eye, which is what I did. A single eye can point to multiple jars. Any jars adjacent to the first location and all similarly connected jars will be considered. Right click on the locus with an attuned eye to put it to use and then you'll see it hovering around. And then right click with an empty hand to remove a crystalline eye, which is what I did. So right click, remove the eye, right click again, put it back. Normally, a maximum of 12 jars can be examined and only one crystalline eye can be used. But placing water crystal clusters adjacent to the silverwood planks of the construct increases this by 8 jars and 1 eye per cluster. So because I have 2 clusters, one invisible one and one visible one, I can have 2 eyes. Each cluster also increases the maximum distance a group of jars can be from a locus. So if you have a lot of crystal clusters, you can have a large area. And finally, you can actually read the amount of essentia you have using a V-reader. And while you can't place it directly underneath this guy, what you can do is place it underneath any of the water blocks and it will function as normal. Now, as it says over here, the locus is also able to obtain information about a essentia reservoir, which I haven't tested yet. But I have a reservoir here filled with various essentia. So what I'm going to do is take a crystalline eye, right click, get the location, try to put it there. Obviously this won't work because I don't have enough crystal clusters. Place that there and then place the eye, and there you go. It's also reading information of this guy, so you can see the overall amount of essentia I have. So you can see how handy it is if I had a very large location with all my Thaumcraft stuff. I can get the total amount of essentia I had overall and figure out it that way. Another thing you can do is have the V reader directly underneath the water, like I read out just there. And you can have any amount of V reader reading from one to another, so I can read from that, read from that. If I get another one of these guys, I could read from that, I could read from that, I could read from that, and so on. So you can see how handy it is to get information across all of your base on how much Essential you had overall. And finally, we have the Inventarium, which is like the item version of the thing we were just talking about there. So instead of Essentia, we can track items. Now, when I first read that, I thought we were gonna be able to see all of the different items we have to all of the chests we would have tagged. But unfortunately, it doesn't work that way yet. I did talk to Tulgin, and he did mention that that is planned for the future. That is, you'll be able to see it like some kind of magical AE system. And whether you'll just be able to see it, or you'll be able to interact with it and take items out or in, which seems like a fantastic idea, I have to mention. A magical AE system that would actually just render the AE system moot, because, you know, you can do everything magically. I certainly would use this method because, well, you guys probably know, but I love Thaumcraft. Yeah. But right now, it can only read out how much item you have and send out a signal with the tally box. When I first found that out, I was like, that doesn't seem like it has a lot of uses, but I was wrong after I actually started playing around with it. So, like I mentioned, it is quite like the Essential Locus in that it allows you to read how much items you have altogether. To function, you have to get the items sorted in a specific way, just like the other thing. So you have to have the amber block, and the amber block goes underneath the bookshelves. I made a mistake where I placed the amber block on the same level as the bookshelves, and it didn't work. So amber block, and then the bookshelves one level higher, and then finally you have to have an order crystal cluster on top of the amber block, and finally the Inventarium core on top at the end. So to tie your containers to the Inventarium, you will need an unseen scribe, and this enchanted device records the contents of certain information about it and passes the information to the Inventarium. Now it won't be able to examine a single type of container, but that's fine. And the first inventory found in front of the device sets this type of item, and the contents must be within a 7x7 area centered on the scribe. Note, this is very important, that the unseen scribe requires a steady supply of Ordo by V-Relay to remain operational. So what does that mean? Well, you're going to need to supply it with Ordo from an energized Aura node constantly for it to work. So as you can see here, I have the unseen scribe, and it's actually active at the moment because in its inactive state, the pen rests in the well. So if I was just to break something like that, okay, well, first of all, everything falls apart. I probably shouldn't have done that, but let me just get this guy and this guy. So crystal cluster, and then the brain. Now it's floating around, and you can see that the pen is resting in the inkwell. So all I need to do is tap it. You can see the magical things goes inside of the core, and this unseen scribe starts to work. Now I have a chest in front of it, so that sets it to a chest, and I also have a chest adjacent to it, so it takes the so it calculates the amount of items I have in both of those, and it does so using the tally box. Now, just like the Essential Locus, the maximum number of unseen scribes allowed per Inventarium core starts at just 1, and each order crystal placed that in a 7x7 area around the core increases the amount of scribes you can have by 1. Each cluster also increases the distance at which a scribe can be from the core. And finally, each bookshelf in the area contributes 81 slots to the maximum number of inventory slots that the inventory can cover, so keep that in mind as well. And finally, to link the unseen scribe to the inventory core, you can just right click with a wand, and then the core has to be within 10 blocks of the scribe. But getting all those fancy details out of the way, how it actually works, and to show it actually in use and how it can be used, we have the two tally boxes here. The tally boxes have to be facing the bookshelves, and that's how you can calculate it. Alternatively, you can also have a remote comparator and an eye centered to the inventorium core here, and you can do it that way as well. However, I'm just going to use it while it's touching the bookshelf. It doesn't have to touch the bookshelf, it can just be facing it. As it says here, to actually read how many of the items you have altogether, you're going to need tally boxes that point toward the inventorium core or towards one of the 8 bookshelves on the little structure we have there. And then the tally boxes will output a redstone signal based on your combined total contents of all the associated containers. Now, if you're using the tally box to point to the inventorium core, you don't have to do it directly. You can also use a remote comparator to do it indirectly, and that's pretty handy by itself. Now, the thing with the tally boxes is you can use the Runic Whitelist or the Blacklist to specify the exact item. So it is still pretty handy because you can still specify the exact item, you just aren't able to see all of the items you have. So you can already imagine the different functions that you can have. So for example, I have 2 examples specified. In this one, I have a Runic Whitelist with 3 armor pieces, so the Crimson Cult helmet, chestplate, and greaves. Now say I had various pipes and magical ways of transporting items, and this whitelist here will only allow the tally box to output the signal if I have all of the 3 items inside of one of the chests. So because say I take out one of the armor pieces, the redstone signal will turn off. So say I had a machine with some kind of thing that uses a redstone signal, or say I had a lamp here, just so I can see if the armor piece actually reached the chest over here. So as you can see, the lamp is on off at the moment because, well, I don't have all of the armor pieces. I put the final armor piece in, and then the tally box sends out a redstone signal, and I know for a fact, just by looking at this lamp, that my armor is in the chest. Now, as I just read out there, if you have various amounts of crystal clusters, you can extend this, the area that is, to a very large area. So you have to imagine this chest being hundreds of blocks away, and I can see just by a redstone lamp turning on if the armor actually reached a chest. So that's pretty handy. Over here I have another way that you could use it. For example, say I had a magical means of mining. I'm not going to specify a mean, you can use whatever. And I wanted, say, 64 diamonds, and then I wanted the machine to turn off. What I can do is I can have the Runic Whitelist, and you have to remember that the whitelist and the blacklist you can specify a lot. So you can specify not just a name, not just an item, but by type as well. And you can even have it specify a certain amount of quantity. So I have it specified to 64 diamonds, which I'm going to put in there. That guy, not the diamonds. And so imagine if this was the miner mining up different amounts of diamonds. So this will keep on ticking and ticking until I get the necessary amount of diamonds. Okay, I'm going to put that lamp there, and you can imagine what's going to happen. The machine is going to keep on ticking until I have the 64 diamonds in the chest, and then the tally box is going to send out a redstone signal, and I can use the redstone to do whatever I want. For example, I can turn off the mining system. I can do anything at all. So there you go. Those are the 2 uses that you can have with the inventorium. You can have many others. I'm just giving 2 random examples, the first ones that I thought of. And yeah, there you go. Those are all of the new content added to Automagy. As you probably saw from this guy, the inventorium, and the Essential Locus, which were 2 of my favorite items in Thaumcraft so far, just by how absolutely handy they are. Automagy is already looking to be one of the best Thaumcraft add-ons, and I'm pretty sure you guys would probably think the same. So you guys should definitely go check it out. The link will be in the description. If you liked the video, please leave a like, and thanks for watching.